video gets started, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate anybody that watches this channel. And if you want to see future or past videos of this channel of Draft Raw, please look in the description box below. Now back to In the Clutch program. Welcome back to In the Clutch. I am your host, Draft Raw, and if you have been following me, I've been doing the 32 for 32 series. That is 32 NFL teams draft for 32 straight days. And I've already done the NFC North, and now I've moved on to the AFC North. If you've seen the last video, I did the Pittsburgh Steelers, and today, obviously, I'm doing my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. With the very first pick, the Baltimore Ravens chose Patrick Queen. Now, Patrick Queen, when I watched his tape, one thing I want to say that he wasn't my number one linebacker. I had Kenneth Murray as my number one, unless you want to count Isaiah Simmons. But it's kind of weird with Isaiah if he's a safety or a linebacker. But my number one guy was Kenneth. So that was the guy I really wanted. But we settled for Patrick Queen, which wasn't too bad of a pick. I thought Patrick Queen was a very fluid athlete, very fast and very high energy. The things that he needed to work on is, of course, block shedding, because I don't think he was as physical as he needed to be. And sometimes he will miss the occasional tackle here or there. But overall, he showed this athleticism that you could really like from him, and that could actually work for the Baltimore Ravens, especially what they did in free agency by improving that defensive line in front that will be in front of him, and getting a guy that they drafted later in the draft that could be that natural thumper guy that he's not. So while you have a natural thumper, Patrick Queen could be a run-around athlete that could really contribute to the Baltimore Ravens team. In the second round, with their next pick, the Baltimore Ravens decided to choose a surprising pick, and that was running back J.K. Dobbins. Now, J.K. Dobbins, to me, was one of the most complete backs in the draft. And surprisingly, based on what a lot of the TV scouts would say about J.K., and comparing him to the other running backs, it seemed like he was the third or fourth best running back in the draft class. After watching tape, it was hard to sit here and say that he wasn't the best. Jonathan Taylor is probably the best pure runner of the running back class. DeAndre Swift probably got the best versatility in terms of the speed, the quickness, the power. It's not all elite, but it's still pretty good. While a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire was probably one of the more powerful running backs in this draft class. But when it came to J.K. Dobbins, I thought he had all of that put into one. With him being complete back, he also has, like I said, speed, power, quickness, and really good hands. He was one of the biggest home run threats within college football. It seemed like every other touch this guy had was going for a 20, 30, 40-yard gain, and even sometimes 50 yards for a touchdown. This guy was almost unstoppable for that Ohio State offense. And it was kind of surprisingly that we was able to get him in the second round. I thought he would have been already drafted. But the simple fact that we did choose him says a lot about how we want to shift this team. They wanted to get a little bit younger at the running back position, at the starting running back position. And I'm not going to say he's going to be the starter, but he's a guy that's definitely going to take over for the future. But what they also wanted to do when they drafted him is that they wanted to get a running back that actually fits that type of system that they run with Lamar Jackson. Mark Ingram, this was his first year. Last year was his first year running in that type of system, and he did well. But it's not a natural thing for him. He's more of a single back I formation type of guy. Gus Edwards is like the same thing. I'm more of a pro-style power running type of situation. Justice Hill is the only running back that will actually fit the offense that the Ravens run now. And now getting J.K. Dobbins, you get a guy that's a complete back, that's probably skill set is better than Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, but also is used to playing in that system, especially with a running quarterback like he had at Ohio State with Justin Fields. Now with the next pick in the third round, they decided to go with on the defensive side of the ball again, and they chose the defensive tackle Justin Manabuke from Texas A&M. Now Justin has a very solid initial punch. He's high energy, too much energy can cause him to get run out of plays or on the ground sometimes. He's quick, and he needs to get better at shedding. The thing that I notice about him is that he has a high energy. He has that quickness. He has that good initial punch when the ball snaps. So those things are really, really good. But when it comes to if he tries to power rush or if it's a running play, he's not great at shedding blocks. And then sometimes with that high energy that he does have that needs to be controlled, that definitely needs to be controlled, he runs himself out of the play, or like I said, he can end up on the ground, which causes big plays for the offense. You need a guy that's going to be in control of doing those type of things. The greatest thing about this situation is that he doesn't have to be an immediate starter. You have Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe and Brandon Williams, and I believe they picked up Justin Ellis during the offseason as well that was already on the team. So you have a plethora of defensive linemen that can be there, that can kind of teach him, and he doesn't have to be the starting, or he doesn't have to be a bigger contributor and for the defensive line. So that can help him out in a way. But for him to actually be a good contributor within the NFL and good for the Ravens, those two things are really huge things that he needs to work on. And once he works on it, he can be a really, really good player for the Baltimore Ravens. Next, they decided to choose in the third round again was Devin Duvernay, wide receiver, Texas. Slot guy most of the time. I noticed that he kind of caught the catch with his body a lot. And the other thing was that he was a big-time yak guy. He's actually also a really consistent good route runner. You don't see great route runners like him all the time. And he wasn't the best route runner in this draft class, but he knew the angles to use and what to take to be able to get open. And his speed was also evident. When you saw him run at the combine in the 4.3s, and then you watch the tape again, you start to notice, wow, this guy is a 4.3 guy. He reminds me a little bit of a Golden Tate and a little bit of a Steve Smith. So there's something about him that could really work for the Baltimore Ravens. And because he is a tough type of receiver and he's a good route runner, very sifty and very savvy type of guy, he could be a pretty big-time contributor. And actually, I think that he could be one of the starters, or whether it's on the outside, because I do think he'd be an outside receiver, or it can also even take over Willie Snead's spot and be in the slot. I wouldn't really expect him to be a starting wide receiver for our class or whatever, because we still have Miles Boykin and Hollywood Brown, and we do have Willie Snead. But he's a young guy that the Ravens drafted that they know that can contribute within the year or two. Then with the next pick, another third-round pick, they decided to choose what I was talking about earlier, the thumper linebacker in Malik Harrison. Malik Harrison is willing to take on blocks. He's a very solid tackler, and he's very solid in coverage. There wasn't anything explosive about Malik Harrison, but what I really, really like about Malik Harrison is that he was the prototypical old school linebacker that could really complement a guy like Patrick Queen. This guy is a little bit more athletic than what people give him credit for. Just because he's not one of the faster linebackers that you're going to see within the NFL doesn't mean that he can't contribute within the NFL. This guy has a lot of tools that could actually make him a better player than Patrick Queen when they first start out. Now, years down the road, Patrick Queen could possibly become better, but Malik Harrison has the certain traits that I look for that I can sit there and say he can be a really good linebacker within the NFL. Next pick is the last pick in the third round, and that was offensive lineman, offensive tackle / guard, Tyree Phillips. Now, when I watched Tyree Phillips, he was big and strong. He doesn't bend his knees consistently. When you're an offensive lineman, you need to bend your knees to basically kind of hold your ground. It's like in boxing. When you bend your knees and you have that 1 foot back, you give yourself balance and power. And he didn't do that consistently. Better foot quickness than actually expected, which could possibly mean that he could actually stay at the tackle position and not the guard position like Roger Goodell basically announced him as guard Tyree Phillips when we drafted him. And I don't know exactly if that was the Ravens' plan, or maybe they said guard and maybe he could come in and be a guard. Maybe they was thinking if they didn't get another offensive lineman in this draft, then they know that they have a guy that can compete for the guard position. But I know this. I think that he could still be a tackle within the NFL because he has surprisingly good foot quickness. So I believe that he could be the swing tackle that we used to have with James Hurst. I think that this was a really, really solid pickup that, honestly, I wasn't sure who he was when we first picked him up because I didn't watch the tape before that draft. But once I watched that tape, I was surprisingly impressed by how good this player actually was. And the simple fact that we took him in the 3rd round gets me to know that the Ravens definitely do know what they're doing. And shouts out to Eric DeCosta. Then with the very next pick within the 4th round, they chose the other offensive lineman. That was Ben Bredesen, offensive guard from Michigan. Now, I'm going to just say this. He's just the typical Big Ten offensive lineman. That means basically he's a guy that he doesn't have the best feet in the world, but he's a really strong dude. He plays the way he's going to play. He's just a natural road grader, strong guy that, whether it's in run or pass, he blocks really well and he uses his strength. Now, he can definitely get beat by quickness, which a lot of Big Ten offensive linemen end up getting beat by quickness. But it's an insurance policy just in case a Tyree Phillips doesn't work, but also in case even a Ben Powers, who we drafted last year, doesn't work. And it gives us a little bit more competition at the guard position that was left vacant when Marciano decided to retire this past offseason. So then with the very next pick in the 5th round, they decided to choose Texas Tech defensive tackle / defensive end, Broderick Washington. The reason why I said / defensive end is because at Texas Tech, they played a lot of 3-down linemen. And he was always usually on the edge, which basically tells me that he seems like he was a natural type of 5 technique, which when we play most of our base package in a 3-4, a 5 technique is that defensive end right next to the Sam linebacker, which is on the strong side. He's a solid solid power rusher. He can shed. He's not crazy athletic, but he's consistent. And so he's not going to be one of the more explosive defensive linemen that you're going to see, but he's going to be a consistent defensive lineman. It gives you the feels of a lot of the defensive linemen that we've drafted over the years in the 5th round or 6th round or whatever that have turned out to be pretty darn good for us when it comes later on, and then they end up getting big contracts because within their last 2 years with us, they decided to explode and become the player that we drafted them for. So maybe that's what Broderick Washington will probably become. But we'll see when we get there. With the last 2 picks, the first of the last 2, we chose in the 6th round wide receiver from SMU, James Prochet. James Prochet makes big catches. He's used to having a volume of catches. The things that I didn't like about him, which fans are not actually saying, and they're just giving him all the praise, but they're not looking at his cons. He's not as quick or fast as you would think because he is a smaller receiver, and he creates zero separation down the field. It's one of those situations where it's just like he's making those big, spectacular, tough catches because he's not separating. It's not because he's just some great receiver that he can track the ball well. He can track the ball well. Don't get me wrong. This dude can track the ball. The problem is that you have to create separation when you get to the NFL. If you're not creating separation playing at SMU, how do you expect to come into the NFL and be just as good? How do you expect to be a better receiver if you're not creating separation at the college level? So we'll see when it comes to him. But I think that, if anything, we draft him for the special teams purposes because he is a return type of player. So maybe he can be a returner, a kick returner, or a punt returner for this team. But I will tell you this right now, he's not as good as what a lot of fans and media is making you think. He is a good receiver, but he's not as good as you think. He doesn't get drafted in the 6th round for nothing. The very last pick, it was kind of surprise, but it wasn't too much of a surprise to me. Everybody was waiting to get the edge rusher. They was fiending for an edge rusher that we didn't get. But we chose safety Geno Stone from Iowa. Why I like this pick, or I kind of knew we were going to go that route, is because they're used to doing this. A lot of times when it gets towards the end of the rounds, they like to choose safeties or guys that can contribute on special teams. And with Geno Stone, he seems like a natural special teams contributor. But he also has this ability that is a little better than what people think. He reminds you a little bit of Chuck Clark when he was coming out of Virginia Tech. The thing with Geno Stone is that he's a natural cover safety that needs to learn how to wrap up. Sometimes when he goes for a tackle, he doesn't make the cleanest wrap up, or he doesn't use the greatest technique when it comes to tackling. But the thing I do like about it is that he does attack the line of scrimmage. And he's a pretty versatile safety. His cover skills is pretty darn good. And at Iowa, they're used to being in zone coverage. So this is a player that, when you think about it, most safeties don't be in man-to-man coverage. They're mostly in zone coverage. And he's a guy that I would say will be probably a natural type of free safety for this team. And I wouldn't say that he has range, like crazy range, like a Earl Thomas or a Kevin Byard or, Ed Reed. But he does have good enough coverage to where within this team, like a Chuck Clark, he can be a very solid contributor and maybe make some plays for this team. He seems like a pretty smart player as well. And also, he's not afraid to try to go after the interception, which is a huge plus for us. But like I said, this is definitely probably just a special team type of situation. So anyway, that was the last pick for our favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens. I thank everybody for watching, and before you leave, at the end of the video, stay tuned for information about my channel and how to follow me. Once again, this is In the Clutch. I am your host, Draft Raw, and I'm out. Thank you for staying to the end of this video. Once again, I am Draft Raw, and this show is called In the Clutch. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and please leave a comment below, and definitely share this video. If you want to see more of me, please hit that subscribe button, and please hit that notification bell. And obviously, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Draft Raw on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also follow me on Facebook at Draft Raw Authentic. Once again, I'm Draft Raw, In the Clutch. Thank you for watching.